Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that absolutely nothing has changed. The same habits, the same excuses, the same anxiety, the same people controlling your emotions, the same goals you've been talking about for months but still haven't started, the same version of you staring back from the mirror. Now let me ask you something. How many more tomorrows are you willing to sacrifice before you finally decide enough is enough? Because the truth is, most people don't lose years of their lives all at once. They lose them one comfortable excuse at a time, one delayed decision at a time, one avoided conversation at a time, one broken promise to themselves at a time. And that's what makes it so dangerous. The destruction is silent. You don't notice it happening. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly realize you've become less disciplined, less confident, less ambitious, less alive. It happens gradually. A little more procrastination, a little more overthinking, a little more self-doubt, a little more waiting, until one day you find yourself living a life you never intended to create. And deep down, you know it. You know you're capable of more. You know there's a stronger version of yourself trying to break free. You know you weren't born to spend your life constantly seeking approval, doubting your decisions, and postponing your potential. Yet, despite knowing all of this, you still feel stuck. Why? Why do intelligent people keep sabotaging themselves? Why do capable people stay trapped in patterns they hate? Why do people who desperately want change continue repeating the same behaviors over and over again? Most people think they know the answer. They blame motivation. They blame circumstances. They blame bad luck. They blame their past. But the real reason is something much deeper and much more uncomfortable. Because what is keeping you stuck isn't your situation. It's your identity. Somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing yourself as someone who takes action. You stopped seeing yourself as someone who follows through. You stopped seeing yourself as someone who can be trusted, not by other people, by yourself. And here's what most people never realize. Every time you tell yourself you're going to do something and don't do it, you teach your brain a lesson. Every time you say you'll wake up early but hit snooze, a lesson. Every time you say you'll start tomorrow, a lesson. Every time you avoid the difficult conversation, a lesson. Every time you ignore what needs to be done, a lesson. And the lesson is always the same. My words don't matter. Think about how dangerous that is. Because confidence isn't built when life goes your way. Confidence is built when your actions prove that your word means something. Without realizing it, millions of people are slowly destroying their self-respect every single day. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've fallen into invisible habits that quietly control their lives. And here's where things become even more dangerous. Most of these habits feel normal. Overthinking feels responsible. People-pleasing feels kind. Avoidance feels safe. Seeking validation feels natural. Comfort feels deserved. But here's the problem. Just because something feels normal doesn't mean it's helping you. In fact, some of the most destructive behaviors in the world feel comfortable while they've taught you when you're destroying your future. And this is exactly why so many people stay stuck for years. They keep trying to change their outcomes while protecting the very behaviors creating those outcomes. They want confidence without discomfort, discipline without sacrifice, respect without boundaries, success without responsibility, peace without self-control. But life doesn't work that way. The Stoics understood something that most people never fully grasp. Your future is hidden inside your daily behavior, not your intentions, not your dreams, not your goals, your behavior. Because at the end of the day, your life is not a reflection of what you want. It's a reflection of what you repeatedly do. And that's a difficult truth, because it forces you to stop looking outward and start looking inward. It forces you to stop asking, why is my life like this? And start asking, what am I doing that keeps creating this? Now, before we go any further, I want you to be completely honest with yourself. Are you actually tired of your problems? Or are you just tired of feeling guilty about them? Because there's a difference. A huge difference. Many people say they want change, but what they really want is relief. They want the guilt to disappear, the anxiety to disappear, the frustration to disappear, without changing the behaviors causing those emotions. But real change doesn't happen when pain becomes unbearable. It happens when excuses become unacceptable. And that moment can happen today, in the next 24 hours. Not because your entire life will magically transform overnight. It won't. But because your direction can. And direction changes everything. A ship doesn't arrive at a new destination the moment it changes course. But from that moment forward, it's no longer heading toward the same place. The same thing is true for you. One decision can change direction. One action can change identity. One moment of courage can change momentum. And that is exactly what the Stoics understood. They knew that transformation doesn't begin with giant breakthroughs. It begins with small moments of honesty. Moments where you stop lying to yourself. Moments where you stop blaming circumstances. Moments where you take responsibility for your own mind. Because whether you realize it or not, there are a few invisible rules currently shaping your life. Rules that determine your confidence, your discipline, your emotional stability, your self-respect. Most people break these rules every day and never understand why they feel lost, overwhelmed, and powerless. But once you see them, everything starts making sense. And the first rule may be the most important of them all, because if you fail this rule, none of the others matter. Rule number 1. Stop negotiating with yourself. Every major transformation begins the moment excuses lose their authority. You know that voice. The voice that appears the moment something becomes uncomfortable. The voice that says, tomorrow, later, not today. You deserve a break. One more time won't hurt. At first, it sounds harmless, even reasonable. But here's what most people never realize. That voice has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure at least requires action. Excuses require nothing. Every time you negotiate with yourself, you reinforce weakness. Every time you honor your commitment, despite discomfort, you reinforce strength. And the scary part, most people are negotiating with themselves dozens of times every day without even noticing. The alarm clock rings. Negotiation. The workout gets difficult. Negotiation. The work becomes boring. Negotiation. The conversation becomes uncomfortable. Negotiation. The opportunity feels risky. Negotiation. Little by little, those negotiations become habits. And those habits become identity. This is why two people with the same intelligence can end up living completely different lives. One follows through. The other negotiates. One acts despite discomfort. The other waits for better feelings. One builds self-trust. The other slowly destroys it. And this brings us to a second problem that's even more dangerous. Because even if you stop negotiating with yourself, there may still be something controlling your life without your permission. Something that quietly dictates your mood, your confidence, your decisions. And until you recognize it, true freedom will remain out of reach. Rule number 2. Stop letting other people decide how you feel. This sounds simple, until you realize how much of your life is controlled by people who aren't, and even thinking about you. Think about yesterday. Maybe someone ignored your message. Maybe someone criticized you. Maybe someone didn't give you the attention you expected. Maybe someone seemed distant, cold, uninterested, and suddenly your entire emotional state changed. Not because your life changed, not because your future changed, not because your value changed, but because someone else's behavior affected the way you saw yourself. And this is where millions of people quietly lose their freedom. They don't realize they're handing control of their emotions to strangers, to co-workers, to family members, to people online, to people whose opinions shouldn't have the power they do. But here's what most people never realize. The pain isn't coming from what happened. It's coming from the story you're telling yourself about what happened. Someone doesn't reply. You tell yourself you're not important. Someone criticizes you. You tell yourself you're not good enough. Someone rejects you. You tell yourself you're not valuable. Notice what happened. The event lasted seconds. The suffering lasted hours, sometimes days, because the event wasn't the problem. The interpretation was. This is exactly what Epictetus understood centuries ago. People are disturbed not by things themselves, but by the meaning they attach to them. And once you understand this, something incredible happens. You stop reacting automatically. You start observing, questioning, choosing. Instead of asking, why did they do this to me? You begin asking, why am I giving this so much power? And that single question can change your entire emotional life. Because freedom begins the moment your self-worth stops depending on external approval. But here's where things get even deeper. Because even after people stop seeking validation, most of them still remain trapped. Not by others, by themselves. And that leads us directly to rule number 3. Stop obeying every emotion you feel. This rule alone can change the direction of your life within 24 hours, because most people spend their entire lives waiting to feel different before they act differently. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel ready. But readiness is one of the biggest illusions ever created. Think about every major decision you've delayed. Starting the business, going to the gym, ending the toxic relationship, setting the boundary, having the difficult conversation. You probably weren't waiting for the right opportunity. You were waiting for the right feeling. And that's exactly why so many people stay stuck. Because feelings are unreliable. Feelings change every hour, sometimes every minute. One moment you feel unstoppable. The next moment you feel uncertain. One moment you're confident. The next moment you're doubting everything. Imagine building your entire future on something that unstable. That's exactly what most people are doing. The Stoics understood something powerful. Your emotions deserve awareness, but they do not deserve authority. Read that again. Your emotions deserve awareness, but they do not deserve authority. Because if you only act when you feel like acting, you will spend most of your life waiting. The strongest people are not the people who always feel motivated. They're the people who learned how to move despite resistance, despite doubt, despite fear, despite discomfort. And every time you do that, something changes inside you. You become harder to break, harder to manipulate, harder to control. Because discipline is not built when things feel easy. Discipline is built when comfort loses the argument. And that's where the real transformation begins. But there's another hidden enemy quietly stealing your peace, one that affects almost everyone watching this video. And until you understand it, you'll continue wasting enormous amounts of energy. Rule number 4. Stop arguing with reality. This may be the most difficult rule in the entire video. Because human beings have a habit of fighting things they cannot change. They fight the past, they fight rejection, they fight mistakes, they fight loss, they fight disappointment. And in doing so, they create a second layer of suffering. The first layer is what happened. The second layer is refusing to accept that it happened. Think about how many nights you've spent replaying conversations, replaying mistakes, replaying betrayals. Imagining different outcomes, different words, different decisions, as though enough mental suffering can somehow rewrite history, but it never does. The past remains unchanged. Reality remains unchanged. The only thing changing is your peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius understood something most people spend decades learning. You don't suffer because reality exists. You suffer because reality refuses to match your expectations. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Reality will never ask permission before changing your life. People will leave. Plans will fail. Unexpected problems will appear. Life will disappoint you. And the faster you accept that truth, the stronger you become. Because acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is clarity. It is looking directly at reality and saying, "This happened. I don't like it, but it happened. Now what?" That final question changes everything, because it shifts your focus from resistance to responsibility, from emotional paralysis to meaningful action, and that's where true power begins. If these ideas are helping you see yourself more clearly, consider subscribing and joining a community dedicated to self-mastery, emotional resilience, and inner strength, because self-awareness is where every transformation starts. And the next rule may be the reason your life feels heavier than it needs to. Rule number 5. Protect your attention at all costs. Most people think they're exhausted because they're working too hard. But that's rarely the truth. They're exhausted because their attention is being pulled in 100 different directions. The moment they wake up, someone else owns their focus. Notifications, messages, news, drama, comparison, endless scrolling, endless noise. And by the time they finally sit alone with their own thoughts, they feel mentally drained. Not because life is difficult, because their attention has been stolen all day. But here's what most people never realize. Your attention is your most valuable asset, because whatever you repeatedly focus on eventually becomes your reality. Focus on problems. You'll find more problems. Focus on resentment. You'll find more reasons to be angry. Focus on fear. You'll find more things to fear. Focus on growth. You'll start growing. Focus on discipline. You'll become disciplined. The direction of your attention eventually becomes the direction of your life. Which brings us to rule number 6. Become comfortable being misunderstood. This rule terrifies people, because deep down, most people want everyone to understand them, approve of them, agree with them, validate them. But here's the reality. No matter how good your intentions are, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, someone will judge you. No matter how hard you try, someone will dislike you. And the moment you stop fighting that reality, something incredible happens. You become free. Free from performance. Free from constant explanation. Free from the exhausting need to manage other people's opinions. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What do I think?" That shift alone changes everything, because self-respect begins where people-pleasing ends. And now we arrive at the final rule, the rule that connects every other rule you've heard today. Rule number 7. Become the person you've been waiting for. Most people are waiting for confidence, waiting for motivation, waiting for certainty, waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for some magical future version of themselves to finally appear. But that version never arrives, because confidence isn't something you find. It's something you build, action by action, decision by decision, challenge by challenge. The person you want to become is not waiting somewhere in the future. That person is being created by the choices you make today, right now, in this moment. And that's why these rules can change your life in 24 hours. Not because your bank account suddenly changes, not because all your problems disappear, not because life becomes easy, but because your direction changes. And direction is everything. 24 hours from now, you may wake up in the same house, the same room, the same city, with the same responsibilities. But if you apply these rules, you won't be the same person. You'll think differently, act differently, respond differently. And that changes everything. Because every great transformation begins with a decision that nobody else can see. A decision to stop negotiating. A decision to stop seeking approval. A decision to stop obeying fear. A decision to accept reality. A decision to protect your attention. A decision to stop explaining yourself. A decision to become who you're capable of becoming. The Stoics understood something that most people spend their entire lives searching for. Freedom is not found in controlling the world. Freedom is found in controlling yourself. And the moment you understand that, You stop waiting for life to change. You become the reason it does.